So I'll start there. Eric Valentine, other than John Kerswick, probably my number one hero. I don't know Eric, though. Anyway, Eric is a producer and engineer. He did the first Third Eye Blind record. He did that amazing Queens of the Stone Age record. He produced All Star by Smash Mouth. Total genius on a different level than the rest of us. But anyway, I was watching one of his videos and he was talking about this amazing thing called the McGurk Effect. Which is MCGURK. I don't know if that's a Scottish thing or what. But apparently this guy in the 70s, and we'll put the link in the description, a neuroscientist in the 70s discovered this thing that when you watch someone speak, and we'll relate this to music in a second, when you watch someone speak, you would think that because speaking is 100% sound, that your brain would prioritize your ears. And it turns out that it doesn't, in fact. Your brain prioritizes what you're seeing with your eyes. And the demonstration of the video, I guarantee you watch it, it's the trippiest thing. It doesn't seem real. There's a guy saying ba, 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 and then the audio stays the same. So the sound of the guy talking is just ba, ba, ba. And then they changed the video to where he's making a fa, fa sound.
Fa with an F.
With an F, not a B. And your brain totally hears it, even though the audio is still the B sound. And they even do a split screen where there's the face making the F sound on one side and the face making the B sound on the other. And when you look at the F side, you hear fa. And when you look at the B side, you hear ba.
It's amazing. So, like, your brain literally changes what it interprets as what you hear based on what you see.
Based on what you see. Which is relevant to what we do because, like, literally today I was working with a client on stage performance and getting their show better and stuff. And the thing we always say is that people listen mostly with their eyes.
And now it's like...
It turns out that's scientifically true. That your eyes...
Modify what you hear.
Yeah, your eyes take precedent over what... And it was really making me think about so many things. I mean, remember, we used to not argue. We never argued. But we used to, like, talk about, like... in the Petty Band. Mm-hmm. And people would be like... Oh, man, listen to that sound. That's so... a Rickenbacker through a Vox. And it's like, yeah, because you've seen pictures of them with Rickenbackers, or you've seen them live. Or live, they used to use these big Vox, the Super Beetle amplifiers. They weren't turned on. They just liked the way they looked, so they were part of the stage backdrop. And people would always be like, oh, man, that's a Rickenbacker through a Vox. That's a classic Rickenbacker through a Vox sound. And I was always baffled because I'm like, that's clearly a Fender guitar through a Fender amp. Like, what are you talking about? That's like I'm no guitar tone genius, but, like, I know a Fender guitar through a Fender amp. And, like, I was just like, how do you think you're hearing a Vox?
Because you're seeing one.
Because you're seeing one.
Yeah.
It just really, to go back to what I was talking about with my client, like, people really do listen with your eyes, and you really influence what they're hearing so much.
There was that time at Boulder Theatre.
Oh, the time at Boulder Theatre, yeah. So, we were, our show at Boulder Theatre, and we, were videoing it. So I have a vintage 78 Marshall, that I don't really play through anymore, but I had it on stage for the look, and so that if my line 6 pedal went down, I could just plug straight into that amp. Anyway, after the show, the sound guy at the Boulder Theatre, amazing sound guy, I think his name's Rob, he's been doing sound there for like 20 years, and he walked up on stage and was like, tell me about this Marshall, man. This thing is like, it's so versatile. You get so many tones out of it. I had like a guitar tone this good in years in this place. And I was like, that amp wasn't even on. Like, it literally, I meant to turn it on for the video so the switch would be lit up, and I forgot, and I was kicking myself. But, you know, sound guys, the front of house guy in theaters, they're not the ones who put mics on stuff. They just get told the guitar is coming up on channel 17. So all he did was hear it, but he was seeing a vintage Marshall amp that's all beat up and has a bunch of stickers on it, and he was like, that tone is unreal. That amp is unbelievable. And I was like, wow, that's so funny. That was not an amp. That was an amp modeling pedal. But you saw an amp.
Yeah. And so that's one of the things we do when we work on performance, either for our own bands or when we work with clients, is you want to help people hear the song by showing them the song. Because people hear with their ears. And so you were talking about back in high school, like you didn't even really know the theory or whatever, but like whoever was taking the solo or singing the song or whatever, like whoever the audience was supposed to look at naturally stepped forward,
right,
and the rest of you guys stepped back. Because otherwise, especially in a noisy environment or like, you know, bad sound, or it's just a wall of sound, nobody knows who's doing what.
Oh, we used to get mad at each other all the time because when we were like 15, like when we first started, we would all just stand right at the microphone, whether you were the one singing the song. And in my high school band, all four of us sang lead on different stuff. And people would come up to you later and be like, oh man, I love it when you sing that Rage Against the Machine song. And it's like, I'm not singing that. Right. That's him. But they can't tell. They just see four guys standing at microphones.
Right.
It's anybody's guess who's
so whoever's the most animated is probably the one that think is singing.
Probably the one singing, yeah. So that's I was just saying today to a client. I mean, that is, at the end of the day, the definition of a good performance is something visual that helps the audience hear the song. I mean, the analogy I make a lot of times, and I say this 10 times a week, so sorry if I've said this on the podcast, but like, ideally, I think of it as like, if I was watching the performance on TV and I turned the sound off, I want to be able to tell what's the tempo of the song. Is it a happy song? Is it an angry song? Is it a sad song? I probably want to be able to see the choruses. I want to see the song sections change without hearing it.
Yeah.
Because that just adds so much to the experience of hearing the song, to have that visual thing that helps you notice, like, oh, there was a change there. Yeah. And that's one way we do that is blocking. We do that all the time where, like, you know, in the petty band, the choruses, everybody moves up to the front of the stage.
On a couple songs.
On a couple songs. Yeah. It's not appropriate on every song.
Oh, it's chorus. Rush forward.
Yeah, right. But there are things that you do that just visually... So it was just so interesting seeing that there's like a scientific thing that, like, no, literally... People do listen a certain amount with their eyes, and that's what a good performance is helping them hear the song. Yeah. It's not, because a lot of times, you know this, we've coached lots of stuff. People feel like they need their movements to be entertaining, and they feel like they've got to jump around and stuff because people will get bored if I'm not being entertaining. It's like, no one. You jumping around, it's not entertaining.
Or wandering.
There's sort of not an amount you could move that would be on its own entertaining. If it's not applying to the song, like it just doesn't, until you get to like Mick Jagger at 70, like running across stadium.
Then your moves are all interesting. If you're Mick Jagger, everything you do is interesting. And weird.
Yeah, that's the other funny thing about performance too, because, and we worry about it and think about it all the time, but like, there are these rules and there's these ideas about the way it works and stagecraft and all that stuff. But then when you get to the point where you're an Adele or a Mick Jagger, like all of those moves go out the window because the people that are coming to see you are coming to see you and they already love you, and it's a different...
we were talking about that guy, the lead singer of Future Islands, when we went to see Future Islands at Red Rocks.
Oh, he's unreal. He's the best.
And he's weird.
So weird.
I mean, I don't even remember his stage moves. I think he was like rolling around on the floor at some point, and
he like swings his arms really big, and he runs around, and he's like a 45-year-old. He looks like a high school teacher.
But he is so like that is so him. Like that's what it's obvious that that's what he's feeling, or at least
yes.
Maybe he's not. Maybe he's acting, but it doesn't feel like acting at all. It feels like that is what he thinks is cool. That is what is coming out of his body naturally, and that trumps all, in my opinion.
I think that's
once you get to a certain
such
level,
an excellent point. And some of that point is commitment.
Yeah.
Like once you get to that level of I'm going to just be me to this real point, that will always look cool. But a lot of people, that's where the struggle is. It's can you get to the point where you can commit?
And you cannot care that there will be some people who think you look like an idiot.
Yeah, and you're that's so beyond the point. You're so in it that nothing else matters.
Yeah.
And that's what the Future Islands singer, it seems like you're watching someone home alone.
Right.
Rocking out to their favorite song, but he's the singer of his favorite song he's ever heard. And he's just going nuts, and it's, it's a really interesting thing. And that goes to the point of the Mick Jaggers and the Adeles. I mean, those people, those are people who've reached that level of commitment where they're not performing, they're living it, Mm-hmm. And I feel like, I don't know how you feel. I feel like we get to do both.
Yeah, it's definitely both. I mean, doing the tribute thing is kind of by definition performing rather than being.
Yeah.
But then the performing, it's kind of a fake it till you make it thing where, maybe we go on stage sometimes not feeling it for whatever reason. Maybe we were tired because we did a nice show the night before. Who knows what?
Yeah.
But you perform it, and then every single show, I mean, probably without exception, I do finally get into it, and it's real. And that's why I keep doing this. Like, if I were just putting, if I were just playing and not getting truly into it at every show, I wouldn't be doing this for 7 years.
Yeah.
That would drive me crazy.
Right.
But every show, I find my way into something authentic, even though I am copying somebody and I'm being somebody. Like, I find my authentic expression of it, and then I go crazy with that.
That's such a good explanation. I mean, many times the first 30 minutes or hour of the show, I am faking it. Uh-huh. But it's sort of like smiling, making you happy.
Right. Yeah.
If you just pretend long enough, eventually the adrenaline starts.
Whereas if you wait for it to just overtake you and you're just standing there waiting for the energy to overtake you, it's not going to come.
It's just, or the show which we're traveling to California a lot this summer to play. But the last summer, one of the shows we did in California, and you were kind of making fun of me later where I was just like stomping the stage, and my feet hurt for like a week afterwards because I was just like... it was an aluminum. It was like a portable stage, an aluminum stage, so it really rattled if you stomped it hard enough. And we'd had a tour. We went on 30 minutes late, and they couldn't figure out the power, and they couldn't figure out the sound routing.
I ended up giving Julian my floor monitor, because they couldn't figure out which monitor was routed where, and so he had no monitoring, and I have in-ears and he doesn't. So I was like, take my monitor.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It was like, everything was a nightmare, and I was like, but we gotta do it. So I was just like, if I just stomp enough, eventually it's gonna come. And it got there, and it was a great show, and we're going back.
Yeah, they invited us back before we even left, I think.
Yeah, I think so. But it's such an interesting thing. Yeah, performance is a weird... I often call it a trick, but probably like magicians talking about like, it's not a trick, it's an illusion. Trick makes it sound cheap, but it is...
It's an illusion until it becomes real.
Until it becomes real. And it's also, I guess part of why I call it a trick is it's something you learn to do. It is not something... I mean, granted, there are performers, and I've been around them, and I've produced them, and I've like, whatever, who are naturals, and just like whatever's happening there, they get it. It's good, it's done. Mm-hmm. That's so rare. And even the people who you would assume are that way, most likely they learned how to do that. Just like you learn how to ride a bike, or just like you learn how to... So, I mean, there is a trick to it, sort of in the same way you'd say there's a trick to riding a bike. Mm-hmm. Figuring out the balance, and your forward motion is what keeps you upright, and, you know, all those things. And getting the confidence that you're not going to fall over. That's half of why you fall over when you're first learning to ride a bike, because you get scared and you stop.
You know, this harkens back to a conversation we had a few days ago. You develop a picture in your head of what it is you want to be and how to do it. So we were talking about this relative to my water skiing training.
That's what it was.
But for you in music, it was like you have a picture of what it means to play and perform on guitar. Mm-hmm. And there are some times you can't bring that picture into focus, and that's when you feel like nothing works. Nobody knows. I don't know.
Yeah.
Nobody can tell but you, because you're good enough that playing at 95% is still amazing.
Yeah.
But there's a picture you get. And so with just a detour a little bit with water skiing, the reason we were talking about this, and I think I actually feel this for performing as well. Like there's a picture, there's a feeling, there's a place that I go to,
right,
where it all works. I'm not thinking about details. I'm like everything has come together and it's like a painting. So.
Yeah.
But for water skiing, so I competed for 16 years, and a lot of that skiing was on really good water, so really smooth water, no other boats on the lake, private lakes. And so I could develop a really good technique, and I skied with great technique for years and years and years on great water with great boats.
National champion.
Yes, one of my records.
I beat just a couple times.
And so I had really solid technique and really reliable technique. So at the end of every season, you know, I would take a break for whatever it was. In Florida, it was a 2-week break. In Colorado, it was a 5-month break. But I'd come back in the spring of the next season, and my very first set would be just as good as what I was skiing at the end of the previous year, even though my muscles weren't in shape, because my brain still remembered the picture.
Yeah.
So my brain was still telling my muscles to execute the same way. Now, I would be sore as hell for about a week after that, because my muscles were not ready to handle that.
Right.
But then it was just a matter of doing volume training and getting the muscles back up to speed. The picture in the brain was still there. Then I skied on Sloan's Lake in Wheatridge, or Edgewater, which is a public lake. So there were multiple boats on the lake, and so there were wakes. And so we were constantly dealing with, you know,
rough water,
basically.
Yeah.
And so I had to start skiing more defensively, because the good technique that I was using is a vulnerable technique when there's waves on the lake. So I had to start skiing kind of like, you know, a little bit more hunched over, a little more protective of my balance. And I lost my good technique picture in my head. Now I ski in a private lake again, and I have for about 4 years or so, 5 maybe. But the picture in my head is still the bad technique picture. And I have been fighting to get the good picture back in my head, and it finally came back this season. Like the last 2 or 3 days of skiing, the right pictures in my head. I'm skiing on good water. I'm skiing with vulnerable but perfect technique. And now I just have to drill the muscles. So anyway, it was just interesting, because like the way it crossed over into music for you.
Right. Because it is that way for me. And I mean, I guess not to belabor it, but I always tell the story too of like how important the mental game is. Years ago, I might have even been in high school, I read a book about the 1980 Russian Olympic team. And I've actually talked about this at seminars that we've put on. Anyway, in the book, they talk about how they, for whatever reason, in 1980 with the Russian Olympic team, they split people up into 4 categories. One category, they had to do 75% physical work, 25% visualization, 50% physical, 50% visualization, etc. And the winners were the people who spent 75% of their practice time visualizing. Mm-hmm. And that, I have found that to be true, that a lot of it is that mental picture you have in your head, and can you access it? Mm-hmm. And I've spent so much time doing that like one of my things that I do is I can kind of almost run a set on fast forward through my head and visualize my way through the important parts, or the part where I need to be up front, or the part, and I just kind of like, as I'm even walking on stage, it's just like, you know, like, and I'm going, oh, and I got to make sure to get that lick, and I see myself getting that lick, and I see myself getting that thing. Yeah. And it's almost put into my head to be like I sort of see the 90 minutes we're going to be out there. It's less, you know, but that's from years of, you know, and I worked really hard on that. I used to have my visualization things I did before I went on stage. I don't do that anymore because it's kind of, you know, I think I firmly believe the brain is a muscle, and anything you work on with it, your brain is just going to get stronger with it. Yeah. Whether it's creativity, whether it's visualizing, whether it's putting yourself in a state, whether it's being able to call up that picture of here's what peak performance is, and I can bring it up. It's really like an exercise thing. Mm-hmm.
And you've done it enough now that you can just click right into it. You don't have to like go somewhere. I used to have to, before my shows, I'd have to like go somewhere by myself. Usually I would just go into the bathroom, go into a stall, and like do my ritual. And now I don't feel like I have to do it most of the time. I mean, we mentioned earlier today that like sometimes we go on stage and we don't feel it yet, but I would say most of the time we do, because we know how to click into it. I mean, it's usually some sort of exceptional circumstance, like, you know, we drove through a blizzard to get there and we barely arrived on time. That those kinds of things destabilize us a little bit sometimes, or
you're 2 stories up off the stage and you hear that your intro music is halfway through playing and no one told you.
Nobody's on stage and you got 30 seconds to get ready. Yeah.
You run down a flight and a half of stairs. Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah, gosh, I guess we didn't start out meaning to talk about the whole mental game thing, but it's interesting that's...
It's so powerful. I mean, it's all up here. So this all actually kind of ties back into the original topic of your brain modifying what, well, maybe it's very loosely tied because it's just the brain, but your brain modifying what you hear based on what you see. But so that's a different topic of like your brain, you know, you being able to physically execute something because of what's in your brain. But it's
I think where you're nailing it is talking about the brain has a filter, and whether it's attitude or state of mind or what you're visually looking at or all of those things, like they're gonna impact your perception of what and you know, critically for musician type people, it's gonna impact the perception of your audience. They're gonna see things and hear things different. I've said it since I met you, like I look like a really good guitar player.
Right.
If you only heard what I was doing. Those are 2 different things.
You know how to get the woos.
I know how to get the woos.
And it's not all the playing. It's partly a playing.
It's sure, but it's just like I've known that for a really long time, like I look like what I'm playing is going really well.
Right.
I don't know. That's half a joke, but whatever.
Yeah. That's probably good for tonight.
That's pretty great for tonight.
I still need to edit this thing and get it out tonight.
We totally forgot yesterday because we were so exhausted from digging up the yard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plus it was Memorial Day, but we moved. We didn't even move tons of sod. We just dug it up. And even that was enough to make me feel like I ran a marathon.
Yeah. Well, all right.
Okay, so anyway, hope you got something out of that, you guys. Thanks for tuning in. See you next week.